Hey everybody, welcome to Tasha Journeys live on a different day on Saturday afternoon because I have a wonderful guest that I'm going to bring on in a few seconds. But first, I want to just thank you all for joining. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and share button, especially my replay game. Show me some love in the comments and let me know where you're watching from if you're on replay and as you're watching live. I love Kenya. It's no surprise. I have said this on my YouTube channel, social media. It is the country that I plan to relocate to semi-permanently or permanently. But first, want to go back again for a few months. But today, my friend who I met in Kenya, she booked a one-way ticket to Nairobi, sight unseen. So we're gonna talk about all of that. Her wonderful ebook, just in case you are not able to stay on during the whole live, I'm going to drop her link to her book in the comment section right now. It's an easy read, especially if you have Kenya on your mind. Go ahead, hit that link, buy the book, support her, and I'm going to let her share later on in the live how purchasing the book helps women in Ghana. So we'll get into all of that. And back to why I say I love Kenya. Kenya was a place where it was easy for me to meet uh, foreigners from all over, and then Kenyans. I really connected with the culture there. So we're gonna talk about all of that. And my most viewed video on my YouTube channel is apartment shopping in Kenya with Tinnae. So without further ado, I'm gonna bring Tinnae on, the author herself. Hi Tinnae, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
So we should
So,
be speaking in Swahili right now. So habari, mambo.
Mambo. That's the only thing I got. And you know what? In Tanzania, in Kenya, it's different between Mambo and Jumbo. So I don't know.
So you can say poa.
Boa.
Yeah, poa. It's just like I'm good, I'm cool.
Okay. So before we get into today's wonderful book, both of our experience in Kenya, I want to let you know that Tinnae is from New York. She's an educator. She purchased her one-way ticket, taking her sabbatical to leave New York to go over to Kenya. And I'm just going to let Tinnae hop in and share anything else she wants to share with you all.
Thanks so much for that great introduction, Tasha. So yes, I'm from Yonkers, New York.
Yeah.
I yes. Uh, so I have been wanting to live abroad for a long, long time. I was always vacationing in places that I was considering moving to or taking a sabbatical to, right? And I was working for Charter Network with a really, really good friend of mine. And I knew I had to leave, not because I hate education or I hate teaching. I just didn't like being in the States anymore. I didn't like it. I don't think I ever liked it. I never liked being cold. I was always mad. We have daylight savings time. It's ridiculous. You leave, it's pitch black. You come back home, it's pitch black. And people ask you stupid questions like, oh, you look sad. Because I am sad. I'm cold. And it's dark outside. And I'm supposed to be in the sun. I'm a person of the sun. That's where I'm supposed to be, right? Like, I don't like being here. And it also started showing up at my work. So I was slipping at work. Um, and I had already told my boss, I was like, so I'm going to leave. And she was like, when? I was like, I don't know, but I had to do it. And I knew the first step was getting rid of my apartment. If you live in New York, getting rid of your apartment is not a good idea unless you have a plan. But I said, I know I'm not going to do it until I have to go, until like there's no option but for me to leave. And so I put a notice with my landlord. I said, okay. And something that we'll talk about later in the book is I journal a lot. So I was in my journal writing all the places, Colombia, Costa Rica, Europe was off the list. I was like, I cannot be around, full transparency, couldn't be around white people, right? Like, just can't happen.
Okay.
They on my nerves on a daily basis. I just need y'all to be where y'all are and let me be where I am with my people, right? And
Okay.
so I was just journaling every day about how are you going to do this? You have to make this move. And so I was like, what are the steps? Give up your apartment. Because once you don't have nowhere to stay, you got to bust a move, right? You have to bust a move. And so I gave notice to my job first, apartment second, and I made a plan from there. So I asked my sister, can I live with you for a certain amount of weeks before I head to Kenya? And then I stayed at my aunt's house for like 4 days because my boss allowed me to only come in, I think, 2 days. And my sister, by the way, lives in upstate New York.
Okay.
So I was in upstate New York taking the Amtrak 2 hours into the city 2 days a week because
Ooh,
that's where I could stay at the time. Exactly. But I was ready to go. In terms of packing and purging, every day when I got home from work, I did a little bit packing and purging, packing and purging, packing and purging. Got a storage, looking at my money, right? So I'm like, I made a budget, met with my financial advisor. This is how much money per month, which was 1,200. I budgeted for $1,200 a month. And
okay.
even in my journals, I was journaling, okay, what is the dollar to the currency in this country, that country? Where can I get the most for my dollar, right? Because that matters. The point of me moving is not to live like I'm living in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so November, what was it? It was early November because I left December 6th. Um, yes, Tanya, it's just cold for no reason. And I got my visa, applied for my visa, did that process. I got my plane ticket, one way ticket,
Wait,
and I
I'm
said,
gonna stop you. I'm gonna stop you. You go. You said a whole lot. You got a whole lot going
sorry,
on.
okay, sorry.
I got some
Okay,
questions. I got some questions for you. And yeah, also I wanna shout out. I
okay.
wanna say welcome to everyone who's joining. Thank you for joining Dana,
Karibu.
HND abroad. Thank you for joining Tanya. Hey Tasha. So thank y'all for joining. Make sure if you haven't done so already, hit that like button. Today got a whole bunch of shares. So I had to slow her down because I got specific
Okay,
questions for her.
okay.
So and it's hard because we know each other. And I know her story because we was in Kenya together. But
Yes.
y'all know I love talking about money. So we're gonna really break down into those numbers because I know people watch my channel because they're considering relocating outside the US and or they just want to see how far their money can stretch and getting their finances together. Which brings me to the sponsor, me, Book Tasha. So if you are thinking about taking a sabbatical, like me and Tanay are talking about, and your finances are all over the place, or you just want to get your finances together to hit a financial goal, consider booking a call with me. You can go to booktasha.com. Go ahead, set that Zoom calendar so we can get you squared away for 2024. And I will be back on tomorrow evening talking about a lot of money stuff because it's going to be Q&A. So it goes down in the DMs. So I will be answering all the questions you guys send me in my DM that I don't respond to. I will be talking about it there. But let's get back to your decision to make a sabbatical. You hated the cold, and I want to go really specifically about deciding to give up your apartment. How long do you think it took you to reach that decision? Like, okay, I'm going to give my landlord notice.
So I'm trying to go back. This was 2022, right? Yes, because last year was 2023. Um, the decision was I knew I wasn't going, I had to make the hard decisions that were going to push me towards what I said I wanted. And part of
Okay.
that was giving up the apartment. If you don't have anywhere to live in New York City, I lived in the Bronx, East Bronx, because I know people can be like, oh, you lived in the Bronx. I lived in Pelham Bay. All right. So I wasn't in the South, nothing wrong with the South Bronx, but I'm just saying I wasn't in the South Bronx. Um, I knew that had to be the next major move after giving notice to my job. Because giving notice to my job, I could have rescinded that resignation at any time, really. I really could have
Okay.
said, not doing it, change my mind, I'm staying, but nowhere to live, all your things in storage is a different thing.
Different.
That's a
Okay.
different thing.
So
Yeah. So
how
that was it.
so when you so you gave notice to your landlord before giving to your job just because you like I can rescind that landlord that was a lot of people may think that notice to my job is it, like that's the scary part. You like no, in New York the apartment giving that notice was serious. Now did you have to break your lease or did you time it to move when your lease ended? How did that work?
Good question. So I was on a month to month. I just had to give 30-day notice. So I told him September 1st. Did I say? I think it was September 1st, and my last day was October 30th.
Okay.
And I did that. I gave him more than 30 days because he was a great landlord, never had a problem, never had any issues that you hear about in New York, like not a pest issue, not a he don't take the trash out issue, not not any issues with him. So I wanted to give him that grace, to give him the 60 days rather, to find a tenant, because that also is a process, right? It's the Hunger Games in New York. People show up with cash, 3 months worth of cash in their hand. I want the apartment now, boom, done. So once I would have given him the keys back, there was no such thing as, oh, by the way, I changed my mind.
I got you.
Whereas at my job, telling my boss, I'm leaving in December. She was like, oh, okay. Should we start looking for people? I was like, well, no, not really, not yet. I could have just rescinded the whole thing, like I said, but like the catalyst was giving him the keys to all my things being in storage. And like I said, I stayed at my aunt's house for 4 days, and then I went to upstate New York, which was even more cold than the city. So that made
Okay.
it real.
That made it real. So I know you said you met with your financial planner to get your numbers in
Yes.
order. You had the number you had for budgeting, which we're gonna break down all the numbers from apartments and food, and we're gonna talk all about that.
Okay.
Um, but what were some of the questions that you had for your financial planner? How did you find your financial planner? Just whatever you want to share about that process.
Sure. So my financial planner is my cousin's best friend.
Okay.
And we were thinking about going into real estate together. So we went and visited. First, I have a question. Should I be looking at my Wi-Fi camera, or I'm looking at you a lot, or should I look straight ahead? I feel like I'm
You
looking
can
all
look.
over.
You can look straight ahead. Look straight ahead.
Okay, look
Yeah.
straight ahead. Okay, I feel like
Yeah.
all right. And so when he told me what he did for a living, I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's so great. Um, I want to move out of the country. Well, first I said I want to move. He's like, where you moving to? Like Brooklyn or something? I was like, nah, like I'm moving out of the country. He's like, oh, okay, well, you need a plan. And I was like, I do need a plan. At the time, I had my house in Houston, which I was renting out. Uh, I also had two properties that I was still paying the mortgage on, which are both paid off now, praise the Lord. But property taxes are a scam. Just paid those. Um, and it hurt a little bit. So the questions I have for him um, were, how do I make sure I don't spend all my money? Like I say I have this budget, but I still have access to all my money. Like, what are the steps I need to take to make sure I'm paying my taxes on things back at home? Um, just how do I make sure everything at home is okay? And then the other big thing was, what should I be investing in while I'm away? Whether it was stocks, whether, how to set up my retirement. Do I pay more or less now that I don't have as many expenses? So making sure that was still in play in terms of contributions to my life insurance, and to my retirement. So those were the
Okay.
questions that I had. And we really broke it down. He asked me how many there. I told him, broke it down by month. Um,
Tinnae, you're frozen a little bit, so I'm gonna take you out the stream, and then I'll add you back when I see you unfrozen. Um, but Tinnae met with her financial planner, right? So similar to when I share my story about deciding to take a sabbatical, I went through my finances. I made sure I was straight, and I knew the plan I needed to have. And today, she met with a financial planner to make sure, like, hey, am I going to be good? Is my home life in the U.S. going to be good while I decide to take this leap of faith and go to Kenya? Like, you want to make sure there's a balance there. Some people just say, I'm gonna take a full leap of faith and just go out sight unseen sometimes, and they sell everything. But that is not me and Tanae's story. We still had different things we kept going on in the United States. So I do see some questions coming in. When Tanae connects back, I will make sure we address those questions. But for me, I will just share I ended up in Kenya just because it was always on my bucket list of a place to travel to. Why? I just honestly, when I made my list for my year long sabbatical, when they came to Africa, I just really picked off of the names I heard the most. And to keep me continuously motivated to make the leave to travel the world solo for a whole year, I will listen to podcasts. I will listen to Stephanie Perry's podcast. I will listen to Picky Girl Travels the World podcast constantly while working, and I would hear different countries and I would hear people share their experience similar to what we're doing right now. And hopefully today is able to come back and join. So let's see. She's sending me a message right now. Okay. She she's coming back. But I heard good things about Kenya. I heard good things about Ghana and different things. So this is how I decided to pick my countries in Africa. And Kenya is a familiar country that I heard growing up. So it was like, okay, I was going to pick this. I had been in South Africa before, so Kenya wasn't my first trip to Africa, but this is how I pick Kenya. And then whenever I pick a country, I always just go to that major city first and just get a feel for it before anything else. So today is back. All right, all
I'm
right.
back. So internet is real in Africa. I'm currently not in Kenya. I'm in Tanzania, which we'll get into later. And sometimes the internet can be spotty, and that's
Yes.
okay. And
No,
that's
it's
okay.
yep, and then every time I'll just bring you out and I see you freeze and I'll just bring you back in. But you were talking about meeting with your financial
Okay.
planner, deciding what to invest in, how much to contribute to like your life insurance. How long did you work with your financial planner? Did you work with him for 6 months, him or her for 6 months, a year, 2 years? Like any guesstimate on how long it took you to develop your plan?
Wow, it was quick.
Okay.
So let's see, February 2022, I went to where did I go? Panama and Colombia.
Mhm.
And when I was there, I just felt so happy and full. I was just so full. And the sun just makes everyone happy. I think that's a scientific fact. I'm not a scientist, but I think it's a scientific fact. And so that was when I think I really was like, you have to make a plan. And like I said, I'm not sure exactly when I met him because it was through my cousin. So it was, but I know it was after that trip
Okay.
that I even was really conscious of the fact that I need to talk to an advisor.
So you
And
so,
then,
so so it sounds like 6 months maybe of meeting with him. Let's just say you met with him in March and then you left in November time frame. So about so 6 months, but you were financially disciplined, it sounds like before that, because I don't know if you weren't disciplined to just have it together in 6 months. So meaning that were you a person like without telling all your business, were you a person that like knew where your money was going? Did you ever feel like, oh my God, I'm living paycheck to paycheck? Like what was your money kind of behavior before deciding to take the sabbatical?
sure. I don't mind being transparent because I think that's something that we have to do more, especially as Black women, wanting to take sabbaticals, is just be honest about the financial journey. So I am very financially disciplined. That comes from growing up with, I'll say growing up having to be cognizant of spending every dollar and not being able to just go into the grocery store and buy whatever I want and not think about how much will this cost and, adding every penny and every nickel and every dollar. So I always knew that I wanted to make sure that I had money and then that my money was working for me. And so it's been a journey of being more financially knowledgeable, being more financially responsible. And the more I learn, the more I do. So I think even maybe without him, I would have been able to make the move, but he definitely put me on the right track to make sure that I was setting myself up for success with retirement, right? So I had at my previous jobs, I still had retirement accounts, and he was like, no, we need to, whatever is the proper names are, but basically we need to take all that money out and put it into one thing. Are you going to put it in the Roth? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? And I was like, what does all this mean? And he was really good. Like, he got a piece of paper one time and it was like being in class, and he made a chart, and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. So that part was really key. So I would definitely say, as much as you might think ask the person or the people who really know and who do this all the time. You reading something, you watching an Instagram for 2 minutes or a TikTok is not it. It's just really not. So book Tasha and
That's
and not.
Look, you said a word. Listen, I gotta jump in because that's what we've been talking about a lot on my channel is retirement and 401k a lot of times, and talking about rolling it over, whether it's to a Roth IRA or IRA. And like you just said, I'm glad you gave this example because you're hearing these terms, you know what they mean. And what I always say on my channel, even if you don't decide to book with me, just come in here every Sunday at 7 p.m. You're going to hear financial terms and you're going to get more comfortable with hearing it. And you can't TikTok yourself to death. Like you can't just
Nope.
I didn't need to be with I could have. I didn't need to be with someone because this is what I do for a living, right? So I was comfortable. When it comes to me working out and losing weight, I'm gonna meet with a nutritionist and a trainer and all of that because that's just not what I do every day. But
Yep.
today, oh Lord, have mercy. People come to me with I saw this on TikTok, and then when I tell them they wrong, they like, but that's not okay. I'm gonna let you go ahead, do you. I would do me, but I just want to say, without even doing a shameless plug of booking Tasha, booktasha.com to book a one-on-one with me. Seriously, if it's not me and you are stuck in your finances and you're constantly DIYing your way through your finances, you need to work with a professional. So I'm so glad you shared that. But so
Sure.
6 months, you were already financially disciplined. Let's move on to one-way ticket to Nairobi. You booked it. You have never been to Kenya? Had you been to Africa before?
I had never been to Africa.
Okay. So one question I got is, I will mine to you is why Kenya, and then someone else had how did you decide? It's not showing. How did you decide which part of Kenya city or country to go to?
Sure. So I started watching YouTube videos. So I'm super grateful to all the women who are content creators. I'm really grateful. It's not my thing, but I'm grateful that someone is doing it. I'm a writer, right? Which is why I wrote an ebook because that's my creative expression. And so I was watching videos. I forget her name. Tigress, something, African tigress, I think. And I knew I didn't want to go to West Africa. West Africa just always seemed live at 5 to me. And I'm from New York. I'm from the concrete jungle. I was like, I gotta be somewhere where it's way down.
Okay.
I don't want no issues. I wanted to be somewhere where I could not have to be so on, right? New York, you watching, you this, you that, your senses are heightened. You don't trust anybody. You're always looking, you're tense, and I just couldn't be in a place like that. So I started watching the videos about Kenya, and everyone was just seemed calm. And I said, okay. I wasn't really concerned about a language barrier because I love language, and I said to myself, I'll learn a language. And I actually started listening to Swahili on the library app. I started listening to the Swahili tapes on my way to work. So I wasn't really concerned so much about a language if it was going to be Kenya or Tanzania. But I chose Nairobi specifically because it would give me just enough city. And if you wanted to go to the country, you could be there quickly. So just enough city, right? Just enough. So that's how I chose Nairobi. And I don't even think I was aware of the coast. I wasn't aware that the coast was a place, like a really popping place, until I got to Kenya.
Same. And a lot of comments, like I said before, the most watched video on my channel is our video, like with you looking at apartments. And if you haven't seen that, if you want to really get a taste for like what is Kenya looks like, and we're gonna talk about apartment costs and all of that. I just dropped a link in the comments. Go ahead, click that link again on the replay game to check it out. Share your comments, because this was spur of the moment. This is what I mean. We was Dora the Explorer all the time. We were just doing random stuff. And so we randomly met a person who showed apartments, and we started looking at all these apartments. So just go on this random adventure with us in this live, because we're having a discussion. And if you're like me, you want to see visuals, go ahead and check the video out. But so you used to the chaos of New York, concrete jungle, you decided East Africa is slower than West Africa. And I will have to agree. Well, I love Ghana, and I had fun times in Ghana. When I think about relocating somewhere, it's definitely gonna be East Africa. It's more my vibe than West Africa. So I agree. And shout out to my Ghanaians who watch the channel, who always show me love. One of my friends I made in Ghana, he be like, I gotta change your mind. It's gotta be Ghana. I'm like,
nah.
I had the time of my life in Ghana. There's nothing wrong with Ghana, but I'm like, for me to live, I need a mix of city life. It's just the culture and the vibe. So that brings me to my next point. Like, what are some myths you want to dispel about Kenya? Like, meaning, I know for me, people, they don't know what they don't know, and I'm not even gonna really give people that much grace, because there's YouTube and you can YouTube. But like, for example, Anthony O'Neill made a super ignorant comment about, oh, he gonna take his kids to Africa so they know what it's like to have money and not live in trees. And it's like, what? Like, you have a platform, you're saying something that ignorant. Like, what? And then people are like, well, that's the image that we're painting in America about Africa. It's just jungle. Okay. There's YouTube, you TikTok, everything else. You can see what it looks like. I know I had some friends be like, what? Is it real? Is it safe there? Like, are you, like, where are you living? They thought I was in the hut. I'm like, come on now. I'm gonna need y'all to get y'all Googles out. So that's one of my myths of, like, it could look like real Buckhead, Atlanta, in certain parts of Nairobi. Like, stop playing. So there's some myths that you want to dispel.
Not only look like Buckhead, it costs like Buckhead. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start there. All those things might be true in terms of how Africa, and I'm saying Africa broadly in this moment, because it is the way that Africa is, I guess, depicted to the rest of the world, is just this resourceless, porous, like you said, living in a tree, Tarzan type of place where there's no quote unquote civility. And one thing I'm grateful to my mother for is my mother was always making sure that my sisters and I were aware that we are Africans and we come from Africans and we are descendants of Africans. And that was something that I always knew. So Africa to me wasn't the place that I saw in photos and in video back in the day. I mean, there was no social media. So like on TV with the Africa HIV stuff and everybody's hungry and all this stuff. So I knew that it wasn't what they were telling me. I couldn't tell you what it was, but I knew what it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when, Nelson Mandela was in jail, my mother was making sure we knew about, well, really me, because I'm the oldest, knew about what was going on with apartheid. We prayed for Nelson Mandela every night. I remember that so distinctly. And so I knew it was a place that I wanted to go to. I knew it, right? So being there wasn't shocked that it looked the way it looked. It was just more relief that I was there and that I belong, and that the assumption of belonging, right? The assumption of belonging. I'm Kenyan until I open my mouth. I'm Tanzanian until I open my mouth. I'm from Cameroon until I open my mouth. I think they're Cameroonian. I'm Rwandan until I open my mouth. So this assumption of belonging is the greatest feeling in the world. And if everybody could experience that, I wish every Black American or Black folks across the diaspora. The Caribbean's a little bit different, but especially us in the States, that feeling of assumption of belonging is just the most beautiful thing. And so I will say Wi-Fi was one of the things, like, oh, you got Wi-Fi? And like, fool, I'm talking to you, ain't I? Ain't we on WhatsApp? What you mean, do I have Wi-Fi? Like, don't ask me no stupid question. And I would get angry because, sometimes people would say things jokingly, but sometimes I'm just like, now you sound ignorant. So if you want to ask me a legitimate question, like my aunt, I think she's 77 years old, and she was like, so like, how do you get your water? That's a fair question, because access to water here is not the same as access to water at home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different than one of my peers saying, oh, so what, you bathing outside? Like, don't ask me something stupid. It's just, no, fool, I'm not. And I say fool because that's what you acting like right now. So I had to explain to I was like, well, some people have water tanks, some people have boreholes, so they're able to drill for their water, and they have like this kind of endless access to water. So it really just depends on your setup. Now, if you in the village, like way deep off in Shag somewhere, then yes, you might have to go to the river still for water, But then, as you know, we always, you and I think, when we were with folks, always had to explain to people what the parallel was in the States. So, yeah, we got water, but not everybody got safe water.
Exactly. Hello, I'm in Michigan, Flint.
Right.
Hello. Exactly. Well, why do we have this? Like, we have places in the U.S. where they can't run their water. Like, people got lead poisoning literally an hour away from me because the water wasn't good for years, and the government knew. That's another thing. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I got a little more because they'll be like, "Oh, the government's corrupt." It's like we have this illusion that there is no corruption or bribery in politics in America, and I'm like, they knew about the water issue in Flint. Governor Snyder knew about that and did nothing, and it built for years. And these people could not literally take showers or drink water. Like, and y'all think that, oh man, you in Africa, so it can't. How you getting water? It's like, come on, y'all. Like, we have the same issues across borders. So anyway, I'm gonna let you go.
No, that's exactly right. And so part of living in the same way we're sold a bill of goods, they're sold a bill of goods about New York being, the U.S. rather being heaven on earth. It's a different thing. It's the same but different. The corruption looks different. The corruption here is just kind of more blatant. Like, you get $10 million from the UK, but you only have $1 million, bruh. $9 million didn't disappear.
Exactly.
Somebody took it. On the other hand, our $10 million, it goes through 27 channels, and then you end up with $1. And they're so, they've weaved the web so well that you can't find who took it and how and when and where, and you don't know what happened until 20 years later because somebody did the documentary. Like, that's how our corruption. I think another myth, so the Wi-Fi, the water, what else? I'm trying to think, what is another major myth? Oh, you know what? Eating with your hands. They're like, oh, so you eating with your hands? And I'm like, yeah, some foods actually require you to eat with your hands because it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Like you eat ugali with your hands because that's how I saw people doing it. And it's like, but what about being sanitary? I was like, you have more access to hand washing in Nairobi than you do in any city I've ever been to in the whole of United States of America. You can wash your hands everywhere. And there are sinks outside of the bathroom. So you don't have to go into the nasty ass bathroom to wash your hands. The sinks are on the outside of the bathroom. So hand washing, we know cleanliness as a whole, derives from the continent. That's another conversation. So cleanliness is a thing, period, point blank.
Yeah, and
So this idea that people are dirty, it's like, nah, people bathe. Bathing is a thing. That's what we do. We bathe all the time.
that was gonna say I remember in Tanzania, like the one big difference. Sometimes I experience it in Nairobi, but in Dar es Salaam, I was in Stone Town in Tanzania, but they bring in a bowl of water to your table and soap to wash, and I would be like, what am I supposed to do with the water? Like I'm like, oh, I was confused because I'm like, why are you bringing? I didn't like. I would be so confused. So yes, differences. Before we jump on to the next thing, I missed this question from H India Bra. Shout out to y'all. Love y'all channel. The financials are really important. Could I meet with a financial advisor and pay a one-time fee? Are you aware of that? Like, when you met with your financial advisor, was it one time, just pay consistent one-time fees, or was it just like a package?
Oh, I don't know how he gets paid. I think I asked him that one time. I think he gets paid because I have an account with him.
Okay.
But I don't pay him per session or a monthly fee. I think because I'm his client and he's with Northwestern Mutual, so I'm not sure how it works, but I don't pay him. He actually reached out to me. He texted me just yesterday, like, hey, it's time for our check-in. Where are you at? That's the main question I get all the time. Where are you? Because I'm never really in one place.
No, and that's a great question, and I will piggyback off of what Tinnae said. Yes, it's fees in the products they sell, security. So if you are investing your money, they're getting a little bit a percentage of that. Like, you just may not know what that is. Some of the commission fees are upfront, so they're getting 2% of every trade or whatever they're doing for you. I will have my financial advisor friend on sometimes in the next few weeks to really break that down and really talk about the difference between working with a financial advisor or certified financial planner or CPA. So good question. Now we talked about the myths. Were there any language barriers in Kenya?
Yes, they speak English, but it's not the same. It's English words, but it's not the same. Because as you know, you could straight be talking English, and then you start thinking to yourself, am I speaking English? What am I saying? And then you pause and you start saying, then you say it again with emphasis, and then they say something to you, and you're like, let me pull up a picture, or let me find another way to try to communicate.
Right.
So there was that language barrier in terms of they speak a British English, we speak American English. Even the vocabulary is different. So for instance, if you came to New York and you was like, oh, how do I get to downtown Brooklyn from Crown Heights? I was like, all right, so get on a 2 train and get off on Hoyt. Get on a 2 train in Crown Heights. I think it's across from the Brooklyn Museum or whatever, and get off on Hoyt. They would say a light at Washington Avenue or whatever that train station is, and a light off at somewhere. But anyway, the word alight, meaning to get on or get off of any type of public transportation, was foreign. So I was like, a light. And you're standing there like, all right, come on, you're smarter than this. Figure it out. What are they talking about? So It does take time to get the English um, communication barrier situated. Um, and then also the accent, right? So it might be harder to understand our accent. Sometimes it can be a challenge to understand their accent. So they could be saying a word and you're like, what are you saying? And they're asking you to repeat yourself. Swahili is spoken there, but Nairobi speaks Ebonics, which I love. I'm here for Ebonics. It's called Shane. And I love it. I love that it's what we get it honest. I just love Black people. Like we get so many things honest. The fact that they were like, yeah, no, we're gonna break this down even more because now we got to communicate to each other. So we're gonna speak this Shane. I love it. I just love who we are. We're so freaking creative and ingenuitive. I love it.
Okay, now let's talk about your book a little bit. I'm going to drop off and you can share a little bit about what the book's about, what inspires you, all of that. I'm going to let you have the floor.
Oh, thank you so much. So the book, as I mentioned before, YouTubing is not my creative niche. It's not something that I wanted to do. It's not something that I felt that I could do. I would see Tasha, we would be hanging out somewhere and she'd be on the phone. I'm like, what girl, what are you doing? She's like, I'm editing this video. I'm like, that's stressful. And so I said, I wanted to capture my experience through writing because I journal. And so I remember putting in my journal, I'm going to write about my experience. And I went with a friend to Rwanda, and we were at a bookstore, and she was saying, yeah, I wrote a kid's book. And I was like, yeah, I want to write about my experience. She's like, you should do it. I was like, yeah. So when we got back to the Airbnb that night, I got in my journal, I wrote the title. This has been the title from the beginning, Newbie to Nairobi, What I Wish I Knew and Discoveries Along the Way. It's been the title from the beginning. And I started writing just, okay, what did you do? What's the first thing you did? Okay, you quit. What's the second thing you did? You gave up your job. Okay, then you were here, there, and everywhere. And you had too much stuff. I thought I had purged enough, but I didn't. I was in Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, and I literally left stuff in the airport bathroom because I just couldn't carry it anymore. I was like, why do I have so much stuff? A coworker of mine baked me a vegan banana bread, and I brought it with me because I think I just wanted something from home. And so by that point, I think I had eaten a quarter of it. And so I cut another piece of it and then I just left the rest. Oh, Lorianne, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't be saying that I left your bread in the airport, but I did because I just couldn't carry so much stuff. So, I just started writing every moment from leaving JFK to getting to Kenya to getting my Airbnb, living in different parts of Nairobi, what the experience was like. And it all came together. And so after writing the initial draft, went through it again, added some components, and I thought I was done. I worked with a graphic organizer to help put the graphics together for the book, and it just wasn't great. I was at a friend's house in DC. Shout out to Jada, Fiercely Feminine Studios in Washington, DC. Check her out. I showed her, and she was like, no, you're not publishing this. And I was like, okay. So for the next 3 weeks, the finished product that you see is all Jada. I'm
I
indebted to
love
her.
this book cover. I love this book cover. I had a few comments on I shared this actual graphic on my community tab on YouTube and on Facebook and Instagram. People are like, I love this book cover. I'm like, and go buy the book too.
Yes, thank you. So the book cover I got from Fiverr, a young lady from Fiverr. But the the zigzags you see, Jada added that. She's like, you got to make it pop. So she added that component. So the cover was Fiverr, but everything else in the book, all Jada. And so I knew I wanted to include Swahili words, but she was like, I think you should have it pop up in different places in the book. And so the little kind of comment bubbles that you see with the Swahili words, all her. And so once that was done, it was the process of who do you publish with? Do you publish with Amazon? Do you publish with Draft to Digital? Who do you publish with? And so I did choose Amazon because I wasn't in the States anymore. I had moved to Tanzania. And so I was like, I have to go with the easiest route, right? And so chose Amazon, started watching videos about how to publish on Amazon. Had to convert it to an EPUB file, which I also got that person off of Fiverr. Um, also let me shout out Melissa, who did a lot of editing for me. So thank you, Melissa. And so here's where I messed up.
Where you messed up?
I thought I thought that when I uploaded the book to Amazon KDP, it would be ready to be. Oh no, Lord, the lights just flickered. Please stay on power. I haven't had power all day. The power came on about 2 hours ago, so hopefully it stays on. I thought once it uploaded, it would just immediately be available on Amazon. Not the case. You have to give it 3 to 5 days because they have to check for copyright infringement and all this other stuff. So I had to delay the date. It was supposed to be published on December 8th. I think I ended up publishing on December 12th or whatever. So whatever your release date is, have everything settled within Amazon KDP 3 to 5 days beforehand. And so now we have the book. And my friend who I told you I went to Rwanda with, she goes to Ghana every year. She has a popcorn business, Kay's Kettle Popcorn. Yes, making sure I'm saying it right. We went to Grambling State University together. Whoop, whoop. And she works with women in Ghana who make shea butter. And so I really wanted to make sure that there was some social impact involved with my ebook. So proceeds from this book go towards Ankara Beauty, which supports the shea butter collective. And I forget the name of the exact village, but it's in northern Ghana. She'll be going there in a couple of weeks, actually. I can't make it just because getting the visa in Tanzania to go there is a long process. So I'm sad I'm going to miss her, but I'm really excited to be able to contribute to the work that she's doing there in Ghana.
I love that when I had saw that the proceeds went to her organization, trying to get us back to where we were. Okay, there we go. I was like, this is so cool. So cool. I love that idea. I saw your live when you did it. I watched the replay on IG. So I'm like, the book is out. You got to come on. Let's talk about your book.
Yes.
So me and Tinnae went hiking. We went to Gatura Greens. We did a lot of cool things in Kenya. And so if you really want to see what Kenya looks like, if you're like, okay, now I'm interested, this ebook is really a nice way to see what your experience may be like if you're thinking about staying for maybe a month. I only stayed in Kenya for a month, but I love that you shared in the book that you went to Diana. Did I say that correctly?
Diani? Yeah.
Diani. Very Diani. I will butcher some, y'all. Y'all know on this channel. I'd be like, what? You share that experience, and also you have different breakouts in the book. Like I'm featured in the book, okay, of people who've been in Kenya for a month, or they're from Kenya, about like what their experience is like, just short blurbs. And you're like, you already mentioned this, you're talking about like just being in the sun and feeling like you're just so connected. So if you really want to get a personal look into what it would be like being in Nairobi, I really encourage you to check the book out. And one thing I forgot to mention, you mentioned it a few times about the visa. I will say one frustration I had when traveling the world was, as U.S. citizens, our blue book goes far. This is why I encourage everyone to have their passport, because Africans don't have that luxury in certain countries. They can't just book a plane ticket or apply for a visa and go anywhere. We have that luxury. So we should take advantage of it. So when I started in Europe, you can go book a flight to Paris and just go. You don't have to fill out a visa form. You just show up and you can be in Europe for 90 days without having a for real visa. In Australia, you do a little visa, you there. It's nothing, there's no real process. But
Right.
Kenya and Tanzania, like you really do have to do a visa. And I don't know if you want to share any experience about getting your visa, what a visa means, or anything like that.
Sure. So what I will say is what I thought I was planning in advance by getting my applying for my visa in November because I wanted everything to be smooth. I was like, I don't want to get too close to my departure date and not have my visa. So what I realized was when I got the visa expires, at least at the time, 6 months from the issue date, not the stamp date. So I was like, "Dag, I should have waited till December 1st." So because now I think I applied November 15th or something. So now I have, these 2.5 weeks almost that I kind of been in Kenya, quote unquote, right? So do it far enough in advance, especially nowadays, because they've changed the process. They don't call it a visa. It's whatever. You need approval to be here. Either way it goes, it's a visa. Basically, you can't come to Kenya and just show up. You cannot. The online process now is a hot mess from what I understand. Even when I went to I just was in Nairobi, and it took 7 days for me to get my visa issued. But before
Wow.
it was 3 days. Yeah, it took 7 days.
I got my visa in like 2 days. Same thing with Tanzania, 2 days, three
Mhm.
days. But the point we're making is you have to apply to enter into these countries. You can't
Yes,
just
you can
show
show
up.
up.
Yeah, you can't just show up. And I had a wake up call because I was just gallivanting around Europe. And then I was like, okay, first country I went to was Egypt. You can pay for a visa on arrival. Basically, you're saying, hey, I'm going to pay to enter your country. They don't really care. They don't look at that. But
Right.
Tanzania was like, oh no, baby, you got to fill out this application. And I was like, what? I checked online and I had to go to Romania. I had to go back to Europe because I didn't plan accordingly.
What?
And I was like, I didn't have to, but I was like, I
Hmm.
was in Egypt with my mom. And I was like, oh yeah, I gotta book my flight to Tanzania. This is how I was traveling, right? I was just going with the flow, right?
Is out here.
You can't do that when you traveling through Africa. I would say you can't do that outside of Europe because we can be in Europe for 90 days and it's like whatever. And I was like, oh, now I always check to see if you can do visa on arrival. Basically means you show up, you go to a certain line, you state why you're entering the country, you have to pay your fee, boom, stamp you in. And Tanzania was like, we highly recommend you do our e-visa before. And so I was like, ooh, I don't want to get to a country and not have a visa, and they will they will reroute you back. You have to leave the country. That's what happens. You don't have a visa. They will say deuces and you are deported back. And sometimes they will send you back to the
Right.
US. So you may be traveling the world and they're like, oh, you need to go back to your home country, back to the
Your
US. Like that's
home country.
home country, not back to Europe or wherever you want to stay close by. So I wasn't trying to play
Nope.
those games. So I went to Romania real quick, did the visa, got it in 3 days. I'm like, oh, okay. With
Yeah.
Kenya, you have to do e-visa. So I just want to let people know you have to apply to enter countries in Africa. That is a standard. Like that's something you can't just decide on a Friday you're gonna go to Ghana because Ghana keep changing if they do visa on arrival or not. You need to have that visa or they will tell you bye-bye. Okay. I just put that out
Yes.
there.
No, it's a real thing. And even so you have 90 days in Kenya. You can apply for an extension, which they usually grant you. They granted me a 2 month extension. Sometimes you could pay a little something, something, and they'll give you a little longer. You know, I did visa on arrival in Tanzania. Again, even though it exists, processes in the African countries that I have visited are not the same as home. And when I say home, I mean the US. And I'm gonna leave it at that. It's not the same. So if you can alleviate Any extra steps, as Tasha mentioned, I strongly suggest you do that. Rwanda was the easiest visa on arrival, I think, because there just wasn't a lot of people there. I
Okay.
even got my yellow fever vaccine in Rwanda. I didn't need it, but I just wanted to have it, which I'm glad I did because when I came back from Nairobi, just in January to come back to Tanzania, they asked for my yellow fever vaccination. And I was like, what? I said, but I'm American. It's like, doesn't matter. You were in Kenya. And I was like, okay. So I'm glad that I have it. You don't necessarily need it, but it's I got it because I didn't want any issues. What do you do or stay while waiting in the country, waiting on the visa? Who pays? What do you? Oh, are you referring to the extension? So I made sure I got my extension before my visa expired in Kenya. Are they really going to put you out? No. But do you want to play with fire? No. You have to pay for it. So I think my extension was 2,000 shilling. Yeah, I
Okay.
think mine was 2,000 shilling. So I would recommend you do it before it expires because if you don't, then they try to tell you, oh, you have to pay me more. Meaning, if they say no, you leave immediately. I mean, you're supposed to. You're supposed to.
So I will share my little nightmare in Japan because girl was about to get deported. So I
I
don't even know
remember
how I got
I
here.
was like, girl, what you doing? Playing with these people.
What am I doing? That's what I was asking myself. Which is so. Listen, if you truly know me, I'm a type A personality, but it's like this is what stress. Corporate America, this is what burnout does to you. Like I lost my mind. I was just like, I'm just gonna go with the flow and be like, oh, I'm about to go to the flow back to the US. But for the most part, like I can't say what would happen in Kenya. I'm gonna share my experience with Japan, and you can apply it to other countries. If they're telling you can't enter the country, you cannot leave to enter the country. You have to rebook and go back to your home country right then. You have to pay. That country is not paying. If you can't pay, I don't know what happens. I guess you would go to a holding station until you can get your friends and family to pay for you to get you a ticket. The country is not paying for you to go. So why I almost got deported was related to COVID. Because I had both my vaccines, but I didn't have a booster shot. And they were like, you didn't get a
Oh,
booster. You can't enter. I was like, what? Like, I
wow.
read the stuff and I was like, oh my God. Sad part about this was I actually had friends that were there and visiting me, was at the airport. So
Mm,
this is where the blue passport, us being Americans, comes into play. Well, I would say North America, Canada and Mexico and the United States. Sometimes they be trying to play Mexico, but I would say
yeah.
Canada and US. It was a couple who was from Canada in the same situation. There was other people from other countries. We were allowed to enter, but we had to take cover. I can't think of the word right now for 2 days and provide test results that we were okay. The people
Okay.
who were not from North America or Europe or whatever, basically just I'm gonna flat out say if you're not from a deemed rich country or rich nation, you got different treatment. And that's what I
Mm,
noticed from like fellow like Africans, true citizens, and they don't have dual citizenship. Their passport means nothing in a lot of places. They just think, oh, you're from West Africa, you're from Nigeria, and I'm not disrespecting Nigeria or Ghana. Bye, go. We don't care. But
yep.
if you were like, ooh, let me throw that blue passport, blue book down, it's a little bit different. It's like, okay, how can we accommodate you where they may not try to detain you or whatever? They may try to work with you and say, okay, you can stay in this airport for 2 days while you figure it out. Where they may do something else if you're from another country. That's just the reality of it all. Um,
Yeah, which is so unfortunate. And I know we had to mention that we're coming on time, but I felt a little guilt having that kind of privilege. And I don't really like to use the word privilege to explain how Black Americans have to move in the world, but solely because we're American. Doesn't matter that we're Black, but because we're American, we do get a special kind of treatment. Um,
I would
and
listen.
it's it's it's
Go ahead, sir.
un it's It's sad. It's really unfortunate, especially, when we met people who, you know, age affording a passport, whether it's your Kenyan passport, or your Tanzanian passport, or Ethiopian passport, you know, then you have to have money to actually go somewhere if you have the passport in the very first place. Um, but just the fact that you can't go to Egypt, or if you do go to Egypt, there's this very long, drawn out process, and your visa is denied. Unless you're a diplomat, or unless you're a professor, or you're well connected. So yeah, you know, and I know sometimes Black Americans can, when we do leave America, it's this kind of distance we want to put between us and America. That's not my home. That's not where I'm from. It is. It is where you're from.
It
And it's
is.
okay. Stop it. You're American. Because you ain't giving up nothing. Give it
You
up.
ain't. Somebody
If
asked
you
me, like,
that mad, go ahead and renounce that citizenship. You ain't about to.
you ain't
But
about to do it. Somebody
you
asked
ain't
me
about
that in
to
Thailand.
do it.
Somebody asked me that in Thailand because I was like, I don't be bashing the U.S. Like, I understand the privileges that I get, and I hate to use that word too, but I don't get that until I leave. I've never felt that I was American until I left the country, like legit,
Right.
because here it's like, oh, okay, you're African American, you are American, but we got to put something before that or whatever, and then you already know what D and I and all, just all the different stuff, and people don't realize. I would say non-black Americans be like, oh, well, you're American. No, because we want to take a knee for to fight injustice against us. We're the problem. It's always this. If
Yeah.
we are American in this country when it benefits the whole. You know what I mean? So being outside the country, I never was viewed as a Black American. It was like, I'm saying, even in Europe, Australia, once they heard the accent, it was like, you're American. You know what I mean? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like, okay, that's cool. Like, it does give you a different level of power or privilege in certain situations,
Yeah.
that I could not have even known unless I left this country. Because I'm like, you
100%
just a Black girl
agree.
here, like, you know what I mean? We get paid the least, we most disrespected. That's not just vibe about, because we be on a tangent. I want to we about to wrap up. We about to wrap up real quick or whatever. Again, my replay game. Let me know how you feeling about this conversation in the comments. Show me some love. The more comments y'all leave on the replay game, it gets this video and content out to more people who would be interested in it. And if you're watching live right now, don't forget to share this on to your Facebook page about this wonderful conversation we're having right now. Last thing
Yeah.
I want to do is close off about the money. Cost of
Yeah.
living, it's however you want to go with this.
Sure. Man, prices have gone up, girl. When I went back to Nairobi, I was like, "Excuse me, you want me to pay how much for what?" So, and sometimes, when you tell someone who hasn't been there, they're like, "Well, how much is it in U.S. dollars?" I'm like, "It's 75 cents, but it don't matter. It used to be a quarter." Like, that's not the point. And I say that to say, we get there and we're like, oh, this is just $2. Oh, this is just $4. Okay, spend that $4 so many times. Case in point, Uber. Uber is mad cheap. They also have Bolt. You can also just flag down a boater, which is a motorbike. So you like, shoot, I'm spending $2.30 on a ride. I'm about to be riding every. But then you get kind of, past your first 2 months, which is what we'll refer to as a honeymoon stage. And then you start thinking to yourself, where's my money going? And you realize you're spending $20 almost a day, or you not even, I say more like $12 a day on transportation, where you could have just walked. Now, I love to walk. I explored most of Nairobi walking, and I also took the matatu, which is the bus. A lot of people's not down. A lot of people aren't down for the matatu. I understand. It's hectic. It's crazy. It's hot. It's packed. It's a lot. I understand.
Hold up.
So don't think that just because it's, you know, a pineapple. How much is a pineapple at home? Probably even in season,
$4.
probably
$4.
$4. Right. So a pineapple in Nairobi is gonna cost you probably 50 cents, 75
Mm-hmm.
cents. Right. So you're thinking, oh, this is so cheap, this is so cheap. But you have to watch um, how it's compounding, because then otherwise you might meet your $1,200 a month and you're like, oh shoot. So I stayed in an Airbnb at first, as a lot of people were just telling me, stay in an Airbnb in different areas and see what you like the most, and then stay in the area you like the most, the longest. So my first Airbnb was um, kind of Parklands, like South Parklands slash I can't think of the city I was staying in. Anyway, it was about by Kenyatta Law School. Why can't I? I'm drawing a blank. It was right by Kenyatta Law School. So that's where I stayed for about 2.5 weeks is what I booked it for. But I ended up liking the area because I was close to CBD. I was close to Fig Tree Market. I was close to Sarit Mall. And they were building a Nivus right down the street. And it's a really nice Nivus, even though which is a grocery store. So I extended that Airbnb at that building, which I liked. Then I moved to Cadden, which is Karen, but that's the other thing. If you don't say the word with the accent, they'll act like they don't know what you're saying. Which I'm like, really, y'all? Y'all not even gonna try to understand what I'm saying? So Cadden, which is a suburb named, yes, after a white woman. She has a whole museum, which I didn't visit, won't visit.
And you talk about this in your book too.
Yeah, like not going. It's a hard no. But I stayed I stayed in the compound with the family in a studio apartment, but it was a really nice size studio apartment. It came with what they refer to as a house girl. We would say maid. And so I like staying out there because I could go for more quiet walks because it kind of really was just a bunch of little subdivisions. So, and the streets were much more paved there and completed than in Nairobi. So I love that I could go on walks there. It was just a little far out, which is what I didn't like. I wasn't as close to CBD. So when I was going out, I would always have to get to town or get to Gong Road or just get to somewhere before I got to my place. So the place in South Parklands was probably $30 a night. And then when I came back from Rwanda, I was able to bargain for $27 a night at a different apartment in the same building. Cadden was a little more expensive because, like I said, it came with a maid. It was in the suburbs, so it's just going to cost more. But I wanted to stay out there, so I paid a little more, and that was okay for me.
Since you mentioned neighborhood, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, since you mentioned the neighborhoods, I know I do get a lot of Kenyans that rewatch.
Ngata. Sorry, that's the name of it.
Okay.
Ngata. Yes.
Shout out to South Beach neighborhood. So my Kenyans who watch the replay game, let me know, show me some love. Listen, they was going in on the other videos. So yeah, I was in South Beach neighborhood, which is like if you are watching this and you have Kenya on your list and we're naming all these neighborhoods. If you go into, I encourage you to be a part of Facebook groups that talk about this a little bit more, the neighborhoods. If you're like, okay, I want to go to Kenya, I want to stay there for a month or two, what areas you need to be in the Facebook groups to figure out the areas. You can't just Google this stuff. You need to be in community, which is how me and Tinnae met. I failed to mention that we met in a Facebook group. Just posting stuff. Yeah, but just shout out to South Beach neighborhood. Cost of living. So today you budgeted $1,200 a month.
Yes.
That's less than $15,000 a year to live on in Kenya. And what was the quality of life? Like you mentioned, you were getting around, but what were you doing? You went on walks, but like $15,000 a year, like just paint a picture. How is that different from being in New York? Is it like, oh, you paying $15,000 a year, but are you just laying in bed all day? What was you doing?
Oh man, December I was on the move. Then when I met you, we were. What was that one day? Was it Christmas Eve? We were out the whole day till like 5 in the morning. Oh my gosh, we met a guy from Canada. we would. It was crazy. It was a crazy day. It was a crazy day. It was a lovely day, but it was like a crazy day. So um, it. I was doing nothing, sleeping, going all over the place, exploring. Uh, you know, the living there, living in Nairobi, living in Nairobi was just. It was the first few months was really just a break from the U.S. It was just like, whew, okay,
Mhm.
I can breathe. I'm not worried. I know people think, are you safe? It's not. They're not. It's not a war torn country, which is propagated a lot by the West, but that's a different conversation. Um, People don't have guns like that. If you have a gun, it's because you're in some shady stuff. People aren't just walking around with guns. There's no such thing as my right. You don't have no right to have a gun like that. It just doesn't exist. Even the police, not even all the police officers have guns. I think they have batons. I think only the military police have guns. Um, so the $1,200, I don't think I ever went over budget, even with going to Diani. I went to Diani 3 times. One of which is recounted in the book. It was quite a journey. I promise you, I thought I was being kidnapped, but I wasn't. I wasn't, but I felt like I was about to. I was like, "This is it. This is the part they tell you about." So I never felt like, oh my gosh, I now have to go work another job. And I also need to mention that I still was working virtually. I coached teachers virtually. So I was still able to do that while I was away because that was a contract job. And there are several people who work for that company who live abroad. So I still was doing that. And the time change, the time difference, it didn't impact me a lot because if you're rested, then you have to work for just 2 hours a day, that's okay, right? So the
Mhm.
$1,200 really went far. I didn't. I never went over budget, even when I was buying things to bring back home. Never went over budget.
We have a question. I'm not sure the last part of this. You said, "Is there a village near Nairobi if I want to visit?" Is that what you're saying? I'm not sure if you can clarify what the question is. I don't know if Tinnae, if you can make that out. No.
Maybe they're trying to say visit, but I'm trying to think. Did I ever go? The only village I went to really was when I was in Diani. Uh, Christina and I met this guy, and he was like, "Oh, you should come to our village where they make coconut wine." And honey, coconut wine, vodka ain't got nothing on this coconut wine that they make, honey. Because I was like, "What is this?" So that's the only real village in terms of building. Again, to Tasha's point of being a community, there are tons of folks who do work in villages, whether it's school, whether it's digging boreholes, which is for water, whether it's building libraries, whether it's helping people have sustainable housing. Uh, there are tons of folks doing that work. I'm not a part of that, but get into those community spaces, and you can definitely find a way to contribute if that's what you want to do.
And I want to be respectful of your time, so I promise we're closing. I feel like I'm the pastor at
Yes,
church.
no
I
worries.
feel like we closing, we be in church for
Because
30 minutes. So
it's
I
no
would say,
problem.
so I would say that I did say we were going to talk about business opportunities, but we have
Mm,
so much stuff I want to talk about that we didn't cover. But I would just say for me, why one of the reasons I want to go back, I did not realize that a lot of the actual companies or businesses, even the tour companies, they're owned by Indians. They're not owned by Kenyans. So a lot of like the actual corporations and stuff is owned by non-Kenyans. And so for me, I want to go back to Kenya for business opportunities to be able to go back and be able to pay Kenyans livable wages, like not livable, but like the real wages. I'm for just to put in perspective, and I ain't trying to go with no savior complex either. I want to be clear about that. But I met a tour guy who he has a degree in engineering, and he's like, I make more doing tours on Airbnb experiences than I would being an engineer full time. So that's the
great.
reality of things. But
I see.
business opportunity I saw is just Kenya is growing in their tourism. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunities there. There's a lot of Kenyans with ideas, but without the capital to do
Right.
it. They do have banks. It's not like it's just like, okay, they do have banks. They do have ways to get lending, but it's not as easy as it is in the US for us. If you build up your credit, go apply, you good. It's a little bit different in Kenya. So for me, I see business opportunity in the tourism sector, um, building for more people who want to come there and live. But I'm not trying to gentrify Kenya. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. So I will have to do a whole nother live on that. I did say I was going to touch on that to people who get my travel diary newsletters. I did say that, but we are just at the beginning. And there's other stuff I still touch on with going back to the cost of living. So Tinnae is being my like she's saying she went to Diani. I still feel like I said it wrong. So if I did, sorry.
No, you.
But
That's right. That's right. Right.
I feel like you being honest. You like I was sleeping. No, today was out here in these streets. Okay, this is how we became friends because, like, I posted in the Facebook group. Like, this is what I love about traveling. Like, people talk about being lonely or whatever, being solo traveler. I've
Mhm.
never felt so unlonely in my life because you can post a picture in a Facebook group and somebody be like, "Okay, I'll meet you there in an hour," or "I'll meet you there
Yep.
tomorrow," or like, there's this community. So I posted I was gonna go to Couture Greens, which is like a tea farm place or whatever, tea farm outside of Nairobi. And so they was like, "Oh, I already had this plan," and we just met for the first time doing this random excursion. And then we just got each other number and we're like, "Oh, I'm going to Sarit Mall. You want to go?" We end up spending Christmas together with meeting other people. Like, you want to go bowling? You
Right.
want to do this? It's like there's mall. So what I was doing, eating, because y'all know I love to eat, going to the
Yes.
mall, going to the movies, hiking, the beautiful landscape of Kenya, like hiking. We went to
Beautiful.
I can't think of the one Kawara forest we went to.
Oh, we went to
Like
Karura Forest.
Karura, yeah. Like
Yeah.
just random stuff. We just did whatever we wanted to do because we could. It was in reach, is what I'm saying. And that's coming from a place, I can't think of another word of privilege because the US dollar goes further in Kenya than it does here. So we're able
Right.
to just wake up and go and eat out all day, eating good street food, eating fresh smoothies. Like today, you want to talk about the fresh stuff? Like we was remember went and got smoothies and we were trying to explain to them like we have it say fresh but it be frozen. And they was like, huh? Like what do you mean?
They
Just
don't. And I mean, what I love is so I cannot eat pineapple in the States. I can't eat pineapple. I have an allergic reaction. The pineapple, we stopped after we came from the tea farm. Was that you? Did we stop at the pineapple man? There was a man. Was that you? I don't remember, but I was with someone. And nevertheless, the pineapples, they're coming straight from down the way. Maybe max hour, 2 hours away. Your pineapple is now at on being sold in your local market or on the street by a street vendor. Chips, aka French fries. Ain't no such thing as frozen French fries. They
they couldn't look.
peel by hand with a knife. Sometimes people use the thing. They cut by hand. Ain't no even the cutter thing. That we have at home. And chips be so I ate chips just about every single day. Big Mo, it probably was Del Monte or somebody, but I can't here. I even in Tanzania though, I think they got Kenya beat with the produce, with the fruits and stuff. Cause I'm not gonna lie, the pineapple here, I was like, what kind of sugar is this? That's trying to take me out. And so the food is fresh. You have to wait longer at restaurants. If you're hungry, like talking about, you're better off going into Quick Trip, getting some nuts or getting something real quick because whatever you order, minimum 15. Even fast food is slow. Like it's not McDonald's fast, where there's a timer. We got to do this in under 2 minutes and 4 seconds. Nah, you're going to get the food when you get the food, homie, is what's about to happen.
I was thinking about street food because and it's funny when you said the
Oh,
potatoes. Like
yeah.
my favorite spot in South Beach. Like I would go get different pitas or whatever, and then like the lady would just be, I'll be talking to her, like she would just be cutting up the
Mhm.
potatoes. That's the potatoes for the day for the chips. Like you know what I mean?
Yep.
And just I would say this, just being outside the US and being in, being, in the continent, on the continent of Africa, like the food just being fresh in general, like no GMOs. My cycles were lighter. Like I didn't have cramps anymore, like just from eating healthy food. So like when I talk about relocating, it's so much more that goes into it. Like my body felt different. I was doing hot yoga in Nairobi. Like I just was like
Yeah.
living my best life. I didn't Kenya was the first and only country I was like, I don't want to leave, but I already had booked my flight to Ghana, so I had to
Yeah,
go.
you were going.
Um,
We were so sad. And I'll also say this about the food. I really, they're trying to push GMO in
I
Kenya. And when
know.
I say they, the West, and the people are like, no. If it's killing y'all, why are you coming over here trying to tell us we should use it because it's going to increase production, or whatever lies they're telling or ways that they're presenting it as a benefit? You've been living certain things, you have to keep certain things in the culture. I think should remain.
Yes,
And I'll tell anybody, anyone that I had spoken to, I was like, you all should protest. I agree. You could throw a glass bottle over there and probably not get arrested if you're in the middle of it. Not promoting violence, but I'm just saying the way they turn up over there for stuff is just different. We're like, oh, let's go to the polls. They're like, and so no, we blocking the whole street. You not
listen,
doing it.
but
So I'm glad that they are educating themselves and resisting that, because it's not good no matter how you slice it or dice it.
it's
And
not.
people are getting cancer now. So it's like y'all didn't have a disease and now you have something. Where do you think it's coming from?
Do
So don't
not
believe that.
say no to GMO, and even when stuff says, because of labeling and packaging here in the US is so, even if it says simple natural whole, you gotta look on the back,
You
read
got
them ingredients, and look, and it will say fresh, whole, all 100%. No sugar means they put sugar
lies.
alcohols, which is worse. So then I'm looking on the back and it says, oh, features some genetically modified foods, and it just said whole, natural, fresh. Like that is so frustrating. And like the chicken tastes different in Kenya because even though here they'll say no hormones or whatever, it no, they for real. That's fresh chicken, like for
It just
real,
came off the side of the road fresh.
legit,
Like it was minding its business, cock a doodle doo. They ran out of chicken. they,
legit.
It's called Kenyeji. I'll never forget in Rhonda with my homegirl. She ordered chicken, and I was like, "Yo, they're skinning the chicken." She was like, "I can't eat it." I was like, "Why?" You was gonna eat. She was like, "The fact that I know it's happening in real time, I can't do it." But it just so happened her food came out right after I said it. I was like, "Oh, whew, that wasn't your chicken." But it's ooh, ooh, here you go. Now you gotta
Right.
whatever they do. I don't even know how you skin a chicken, but
Listen, that's the going back to throwback Alabama days. My family's from Alabama. I remember when we
girl,
went
my family from
hiking.
Valdosta, Georgia. Yes.
Listen, when we were hiking, remember the red dirt? We were talking about that. Like I was like, are we gonna go? Like the red dirt. It's just so many things that is in Kenya that reminded me of being back at home in the US, whether I go to Alabama visiting family,
Yes.
just certain parts, like I said, feel like I'm in Atlanta. It's like so many places that reminded me of being back home in the US, which is why
Right.
I felt so comfortable in Kenya. And I would say that the vibe of Kenya, since you're in Tanzania now, I was I always compare like the vibe of the people. Like I feel like Kenyans are like East Coast people, or Detroiters from their attitude. Like we ain't gonna talk, we ain't gonna say nothing to you. Say it's just like, but when you went to Zion, I would say I was only in Dar and I was in Stone Town, so I'm not trying to say speak for the whole country. Same thing in Kenya. I'm only speaking for Nairobi. But like
Mhm.
it's more like a like trying to fill you out a little bit, which is what I'm used to. And in Tanzania,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's like this welcoming, like it's for like you East Coast Kenya, and you in the South when you go to Tanzania with the hospitality. It's like I don't know if you feel the same way or anything to compare it to.
I would agree. I would agree. Nairobi is, I think you can put, some Nairobi folk, drop them in Detroit, Chicago, New York, maybe even Oakland, you know what I'm saying, Cleveland. And until they open their mouth, no one's gonna really know, you know, that they're not from there. But in Tanzania, so I work at a school now. So I'm working in Tanzania. I'm not on sabbatical anymore, which is a
Okay.
different lifestyle. But I will say I'm still not stressed. I'm not stressed. I'm not like, oh my gosh, let me quit, even though I told these people I'm going to be here. It's nothing like that. And I think it's because of the hospitality. Everything is karibu, karibu, asante, like
Yes,
you're
that's what
welcome.
it's terrible. Yes, 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 yes.
Every and they're pulling. You could I don't even know blink too many times. Pole sana is which is like I'm sorry. It's like I'm fine. And Asante, everything's thank you, please, thank you. Just and I'm learning proper Swahili here. And when you greeting people, I think you remember Bernie Mac had a set where he used to say, you know, when you greet black people, you got to be in shape because they want to dap you up and all that. Here, even though it's not dapping up, it's the verbal equivalent. It's a whole 5 minute thing to say hello. It's a habari asubuhi, mzuri, uko poa, kwema, mzima. And so I've learned there's like 5 ways to say I'm fine. Every day they tell me a new one. I was like, just the other day you taught me kwema, and you taught me enzima. So now you're saying something else to me. Oh, it just means you're fine. So it's really like a whole 5 minute thing. How you doing? It don't matter how many times I see you. So
Listen,
you're right. It gives you that southern feel. Even every morning, I'm hearing people sweep outside, and so it does give you that feel of comfortability and which I like. But I need Nairobi because I need sometimes to feel the edge.
and
I
this is
really do.
it can look. So I went to Tanzania first and came to Kenya. And so like I was kind of expressing the same vibe. But when I got there, I was like, first of all, South B, I feel like I'm on 7 Mile in Detroit. Like for real. Like
Honey,
I
when I
was
went to see you, I was like, girl, where you got me at? Yeah, got me out in the hood. I'm trying
I
to.
was like, I didn't know. And that's what people didn't think I was from. They didn't think I was American because they were like, first of all, I will say I changed my dress, like how I like. I would say in the U.S., like women, we wear our skirts like a little bit below above our knees or Daisy Dukes or whatever. It's
Mm,
not looked at. When I was in Tanzania, it's more conservative, and no one
wait.
said anything, but I felt it. So I bought longer dresses. I want to be respectful to wherever the culture I'm at. I'm not gonna be like I'm from America, and so no. So I bought longer dresses. So I had this attire when I went to Kenya. So people thought, I wasn't from the US. And then also the neighborhood I was in, it's not really a lot of foreigners that go there in South Beach. So
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, I'm at home. They're like, why are you not over in the Westlands or whatever? I'm like, I'm good. Just feel like I'm at home
Right.
here. You know what I mean? So but it was a little bit of a culture shock coming to Kenya from Tanzania because it was like, oh crap, I'm back at home. Like people trying to fill you out. Like it wasn't just like when I was walking down the street in Tanzania, it would be like, I would say this is different to men. Men greeting me and stuff is like, is they trying to get on a little bit. But I
Yeah.
would say in Tanzania, just the welcomingness or whatever, I got used to that. So in Kenya, when I got there, people didn't say nothing. I was just like, okay, this is different. And I was like, actually, it's like being at home. Like after I was there for a few days, and people were speaking, like they'll say something to me, and then they like, I was trying not to speak so bad because I'm like, they gonna know I'm American,
Right.
like or
Right. Right.
whatever, because no one really knew. You kind of blend in. I'm not even, and women would tell me that, like, I did not think you was American, like at
Yeah.
all. Like I'm not even playing.
Yeah.
So
I feel like I get that from everybody. Like not even like no matter your skin tone, because depending on which tribe you're from, you might be lighter, you might be more brown. Um, so again, this assumption of belonging, that
yeah,
is the most powerful thing that I think I have felt in my life. It really, really is. It
same.
really, really.
I feel the vibe is different. Even though I've only been to Ghana, I feel like it's more genuine being on in East Africa than West Africa. Which is
Mm.
why I feel like it was home, like for me to want to go back and explore more. And I have to say, like, okay, you made a point of being there the first 2 months. You in the honeymoon stage. Yeah, I was there for a month. I was in the honeymoon stage or whatever. I was just really starting to like the first 2 weeks, I was just trying to find my way, get comfortable. And it took about 2 weeks for people in my neighborhood to really start talking to me because they were trying to feel me out. Like, you know what I
Who
mean?
are you?
So, right, who are you? So it was just the experience there, like that sense of belonging. That's all I can say. Or like, why can't you? I'm like, because it just felt like I was at home, and it wasn't no fakeness or whatever of like, oh, welcome home, sister. Which you hear whenever you go to Africa for the first time, you'll hear that when you say you're from America. It's like, all right, okay, yeah, welcome home. But like, it wasn't none of that. Kid, that was like, let me see. Before we
Yeah.
say welcome home, let me see what you about first. So,
Right. I don't know you like that. I don't know you
oh
like
no, you.
that. You don't
It
know me. And if they've had the experience of travelers coming in and then they notice that their community changes. So they have every right to be skeptical.
right.
Even if we do share the same skin color, that mean and the same facial features, it doesn't mean that you mean me well.
Right. Exactly. I think that's a myth for Black Americans when they go to Africa. They feel like we're talking about connectedness. We have to think about our perspective. We're saying we're going to learn and respect the culture, right?
Right.
We're not trying to bring our ways or this change this or whatever. Like me saying for business opportunities is like I want to work with Kenyans to figure out how to get capital there, not coming with my own thing or whatever. And I feel I don't know, I forgot what I was gonna say, but just in general, I'm hungry. I need to eat,
Time to eat.
which is probably why I can't keep my train of thought. But I want to thank you so much for coming on. Any last few things you want to say that we can talk about?
I would just say definitely come with an open mind. If you're coming long term, come with less things than you think you need. Um, I would say be kind to folks. Be aware that the way in which the rest of the world operates is not the way in which you're likely accustomed to, and that might take some adjustment.
Mhm.
Um, I will also say go to the coast. It's nice. Uh, and be in community. Be in community as much as you can. I'm not saying trust everyone blindly
Right.
because I'll share this one thing. The Airbnb, the first place that I stayed in, I was trying to pay her through PayPal, but then PayPal blocked me. So I paid her through M-Pesa, which is like Zelle, Venmo, Cash App.
I'm missing Pesa. Go ahead. Sorry.
Girl, when I be at home, I be like, why do I got to go through this process? I hear you. But somehow or another, PayPal ended up approving the payment that I made to her. She wasn't going to tell me. She didn't tell me. Not wasn't going to. She didn't tell me. I just so happened to look at my bank statement. And so I went to her and said, "Did you receive this payment?" She was like, "Yes." I was like, "So why didn't you give me my money back?" So we're not saying be blind and just trust everybody that's trying to be your friend,
Right.
but respect the community. Things are not done the same way. Things sometimes take longer. So fine. If Costa Rica is better for you, then go to Costa Rica then. Go to Mexico then. Don't come here with that attitude because we don't need it.
Ooh,
We,
I
we,
heard
we, we don't need it. Like, oh, this process, why even people, oh, they so slow, they so dumb. Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute. Hold up. First of all, now I know I can't rock with you no more if that's your mindset. Secondly, did you not just leave a place that has the same view of you? So
right.
what are we doing? What are we doing here? Right? So yes, and be very patient. Your patience is a new level patience. It's a new level patience. So come, be open, be patient, be welcoming, be kind. Do saying asante, which is thank you. Saying you're welcome, which is karibu. Saying please, which is tafadali. all those things, when you're showing that you're trying to be in community, it really does go a long way. And as best you can, try to support Black Kenyans. And I say that because the Indians that are there are Kenyan citizens, so they are Kenyan. But the same way in which we are Black Americans, Black Kenyans, try to support them. Gatura Greens is owned by a Black Kenyan family. There are other tea farms, but you will never catch me on a tea farm. Oh, I'm sixth generation. You sixth generation colonialism, which means I should probably set this on fire. So I'm sorry. What? No, like we're not doing it. We're not doing it, sis. We're not. And you're a billionaire because your great great grandfather did what? He came and asked for it, and somebody gave it, and somebody he paid for it. No, he did. Okay, so we're
Listen,
not.
wait, I gotta jump in because colonial. I would say this was my ignorance going to Kenya. I just didn't realize like colonization for real until I was there. You know what I mean?
Fair.
Like going to the museum, I'd be mad, like, like, just that frustration, like you said. So you do have to go the extra step to make sure you are supporting Black Kenyans, like non-colonizers. Like you do. You wouldn't think you would have to, but you really do. Because I'm like you. I want to support Black Kenyans. I want to support the natives of Kenya, not people who lost their land or got their not lost, got their land taken from them and business. Like I ain't trying to support none of that. None of it.
Yeah. Nope. Even Nivus. I don't know who owns Nivus, if it's Black Kenyans or a mixture of people who invested, but at least it's a Kenyan owned. Whereas the other grocery store, Carrefour, I think is run by somebody in the Middle East. And Chanadara is an Indian chain, and so is Zucchini Green, which is like a Whole Foods. But Nibus is at least owned locally, and hopefully maybe some Black Kenyans were able to invest in it, in some way, somehow. So, and you wouldn't really know that unless you were friends with Kenyans. It's easy to
Right.
befriend Black Americans because it's familiar,
Mm-hmm.
and it's you feel safe in terms of, oh, you can understand what I'm saying. I don't have to rethink what I'm saying. But go through that process, feel it a little bit, and it's okay. Visit Tanzania, visit Rwanda, Ethiopia, if that's on your list, and experience the fullness of East Africa. So, and also, you can purchase my book, Newbie to Nairobi, What I Wish I Knew and Discoveries Along the Way. And part of the proceeds do support Ankara Beauty. I will say she makes these lovely gift boxes when she visits Ghana from different vendors. She buys different trinkets, and they include shea butter and just different things that she finds. They sell out so fast. So be looking for it, I think, in early March, if that's another way you can support Ankara Beauty and the women in that community.
Got one last question. I'm sharing on the screen. I'm
Lord.
sharing on the screen real quick before Tinnae answers this question. Her cover, her book. So when you Google it, I'll put the link in the comment section on the live replay. I'll link it in the replay portion comments as well. But if you Google Newbie to Nairobi, this is the cover you're looking for, and go ahead and support today. And we have our last question.
Oh my gosh. Cost of traveling between countries was shocking to me. I thought I was going to be on like a low Southwest airline tip, going from Kenya to Rwanda. It's expensive. Interstate, intercountry rather, travel is expensive, which is insane to me. So my flight from Nairobi to Rwanda, which I have to say I bought last minute because the Leo in me sometimes, I don't know. I'm just like, let's do something. Or I know it's coming, but I'm like, surely time is waiting for me. I'm not sure where I get that from. I think it's a Leo thing. But it was $350 for a flight that's an hour and 45 minutes.
So it's
When I
pretty
went,
much like it's traveling interstate from through the US. I was shocked by that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, me too. I was like, oh, it's about to be 150, something like that. Nope. When I went to Nairobi, now where I am in Tanzania, I am not in Dar es Salaam. I'm not in a major city. I am in a city, but it's not Dar es Salaam. It's not Zanzibar. So there's an airport here, but I have to fly to Dar to get to anywhere else. So the flight to Dar is usually about anywhere between $90 and $150, depending on when you buy it. And then the flight to Nairobi is about anywhere between 120 and 150. Again, depending on when you buy it. But the cheapest I've seen from Dar to Nairobi has been 120 that I've seen. So it's a little costly, more than you would expect, especially if you're just going next door. You would think, oh my goodness, I'm just going next door. Why is this costing me so much? So be prepared for that. But you do save on the back end in terms of food, in terms of lodging, and in terms of travel within the country is pretty inexpensive.
Yeah, I will listen. I was not prepared. I was prepared a little bit because I did some Googling before I left the US to kind of get my budget together between traveling between the countries. But again, that shock of like is not the same as being on other continents where when you're in Asia or when you're in Europe. Um, I can't speak for Australia. I mean, from Oceania because I didn't go to New Zealand, but thinking of other continents, Europe and Asia, it's cheap to fly between those other countries. Like,
Right.
um, what we were
Yeah.
saying, it's not like it's $1,000, but it's like 300, 350. Like that's the flight for me to go from Detroit to San Francisco. So I mean, sometimes it usually be like 500, right? And when you look and you're in Asia, if you want to go to different parts of Thailand or go to Thailand to Japan, it just depends on when you book it. But you're not you can find it $100, $120 flight for certain places depending on when you book. Well, hands down, the easiest continent to fly in the country is going to be Europe because the trains and the flights is like it's super cheap. You're not going to experience that in Africa. It's going to be equivalent to USD interstate travel, if not more.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Any other last minute questions before we go? So really, I can
Mhm.
eat. I like my my train of thought just started escaping me. I'm like, all right. Like,
I guess for those of us who live in a cold place, it does get cold in Nairobi during our summer, which so probably starting in about May, it gets it's not cold like home, but it is like you walk outside like, what is this? Like your body almost like my body was like, what? Hold up, I thought we happened. So um May to probably what September, October, it's cool. It's cool enough to where you might be like, dag, I should have stayed at home. And
no,
there's no heat. Like there's not heat in the house unless you're wealthy and you got heat. So there's
that's
not
a good
heat.
thing to point out. That's a
Yeah.
good thing to
So
point out because I didn't know that as far as being there. I was there in November, December time frame. So
yep.
it was like California winter weather where it's like our equivalent of like 60 degrees. It could go up to between 60, 75 degrees, and then at night it drop down where you do need a jacket or whatever. But I
Mhm.
wasn't sure about that winter weather. But I want
Yep.
to say thank you so much for coming on. Make sure y'all buy Tinnae's book because she talked about all the ins and outs we didn't cover, like there's no plastic bags. How do you do currency
Oh
exchange? All that
yeah.
stuff. We didn't even
Right.
get a chance to get to today, but it's in the book. Like, and it's easy to find. It's not like you got to go through 25 pages to find at one point about how to exchange your currency. Like, I really love the book. It's an easy read. She has some Swahili points in there. So yeah, I got to just show this book again. I love reading it. And one last time, I want y'all to thank Tinnae for coming on. Show her some love in the comment section. And I will see y'all tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bye
Asante
bye.
sana.